One of the signs that Edwards says we should look for in true Christians is what he calls humiliation, or even evangelical humiliation. And it's the idea that you know the wickedness of your own heart. You have a sense about how sinful you are, and that will always have an effect in the heart of a true Christian, that they would want to be battling sin and walking in God's ways. And when he talks about humiliation, he says, humiliation can happen among unbelievers. Unbelievers have a bit of humility. They see their sin. But it looks more like what we might call a nobody's perfect sort of a thing. So yes, God is holy, and yes, I'm not perfect, and yes, I didn't do everything the way that I should, and so I need to do things better. I need to be less sinful, and I need to be more righteous. And Edwards thinks that misses an important aspect. And the main distinction between the way that unbeliever was just thinking and the way that a believer thinks is what he calls the work of the Holy Spirit, and the work of the Holy Spirit in particular helping that person see that they are that they're sinful, but specifically showing them that because they show them how great and glorious and excellent God is. So basically the Holy Spirit is working to bring the Christian a larger view, a greater understanding of the holiness of God and the greatness of God. And that has an effect in the heart of a Christian to make them really truly humble, because they begin to see themselves as they really appear next to the greatness of God. And so he spends some time in this section then talking about how the Bible expects us to be broken over our sin and have a contrite heart. And he speaks of passages from Psalm 34 and Psalm 51. Isaiah 66 says, "This is the one who I will look to, the one who is broken and a contrite heart." And he even points to Jesus' words in Matthew 5, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." And so he expects that God, by his Spirit, will work such a view of the greatness of God in the hearts of a believer that they will see their own unworthiness, sinfulness, wickedness in comparison, and that they will not just know that they don't match up, but they will feel the badness of their sin, and it'll have at least two main effects in their life. They will not think too much of their spiritual attainments, because they see God's greatness and they see, yes, I've got certain attainments, and yet they're nowhere near what they ought to be based on how glorious God is. He says the one without seeing the greatness of God, they will be more like the Pharisees who says, Lord, I'm so glad I'm not like this sinner next to me, right? They'll be spiritually proud, those people who don't see the greatness of God, and they just know that they ought to, read their Bible and know truth of the Bible more. They'll begin to think, I know something, and I know lots, and I'm really proud of my spiritual attainments. And he says this won't happen with evangelical humiliation. They will, yes, make progress, even the same progress or more progress than others, and yet they will say, I know how great God is and how much I should know and how much I ought to love him more than I do, and then they won't become proud or puffed up about their spiritual attainments. The other way works the same. They'll know not just, I don't match up, but really nobody does, because, see, that way of doing things, that's a kind of a way an unbeliever would do it. You're just comparing yourself to other sinners. And of course, when you compare yourself to other sinners, you're probably not the worst sinner out there. And so this is not a helpful way to do it. And so he encourages them to have evangelical humiliation, by which they compare themselves to the holy God, the Holy One who is God, and there, the wickedness of your sin is clearly seen. You will not be proud about the sin you've already put away, because you see how much more sin there is for you to put away, and how worthy God is for you to put away every bit of sin and to have nothing in your affections above God. And so it keeps us humble. So evangelical humiliation then is what we just say, a work of God's Spirit by which we see the greatness of God, and it puts within us a large measure of humility over our spiritual attainments, in terms of knowledge and righteousness, and a humility over the remaining sin that's in us, so that we hate it and we turn from it and are helped by God to overcome it by the Spirit's power.